welcome back. It's Christine again with the Artist Pod, and today we're going to talk about an Indian giant squirrel, also known as a malabar squirrel. So, let's get arting. Alright, so this is the Indian giant squirrel. They have an entire array of colors. So we'll see how it turns out. Hopefully it doesn't look fake. Sometimes when you have these sort of extraordinary colors in nature, they don't look real, but there's also, I didn't find anything that indicates that it's consistent, like their colorations can sort of vary from squirrel to squirrel. There are certain things that seem common, but not necessarily things that seem to be always true, so have a little bit of flexibility there. So we're going to start with the orange on the face. And by the nose, there's going to be those nice short strokes where I intermix them. And then there's going to be sort of this buff color on his chest and his chin here, with some purple here on his forehead. Again, it can be different from squirrel to squirrel, so, you know, it sort of leaves it open for some artistic choices. Just slowly building it up as we stagger the lines. They don't all have the purple right here. Sometimes it's that kind of light tan kind of color of their chest is right through here. But I thought that would give him an extra little sort of burst of purple. That might be interesting. And I forgot to do his paws, which are also that same orange. So we're going to fill those in real fast, and then we'll move to some other colors. Alright, these guys are definitely some crazy colors. Alright, well, he's looking a little crazy. So, I opted not to include their tails, partly because it seems like they like to dangle their tails down, and so he would be a pretty small figure with this long tail taking up, you know, almost the whole canvas. So instead I opted to just assume his tail is dragging out behind him. They also have pretty thick arms, almost buff-like looking arms. So, start with the orange. And let's say the light source is coming in from above and to the right. You know, like always, that means it's coming from above and in front of, right? So, let's do it. All right, it's just full pin pressure. Over here will be in shadow as it works to the left side of the face. But all of this is going to be in highlight by the nose. I'm going to need flexibility on the left side to build in the shadows. That's why I'm kind of holding back a bit. And I'll do a light layer like I usually do, that kind of very light pin pressure, and then sort of work on the highlights from there. On this side I don't need to do that because all of this is going to be in highlight. Under here, though, is going to be in shadow, right? Because you have this section, you know, a rounded section, and the light is coming in from this side, so this is going to be in shadow underneath. And then all edges are always in shadow, because even the side of towards the light source is, you know, as it rounds away, goes into shadow. So the edge of his cheek here will be in shadow as well. They also have a lot of whiskers, so that's going to hide some of this transition. And then of course all of this is highlight. Just need to make sure that the highlight makes sense as to the shadows, like, you know, I don't overwhelm those shadows as it connects back into them. I don't want to create a definitive line of shadow, not shadow. So I have pretty extreme transition happening right now between shadow and highlight. That's just to give me the flexibility, you know, like I like to do, where I can then transition highlight to shadow. Foreheads tend to have a little bit more highlight because of the way the light source is coming in. You know, you have kind of the circle of the forehead, the circle of the entire face, the circle of the mouth, the individual circles of the cheeks. But this is going to be catching more light, right? Because you have this whole section that's going to be hitting that light without having really much interference. Whereas once you get to the nose, there's some dips and bumps along the way. As we bring the nose over, some of it will be going into shadow right around here. But we want to make sure that's not a hard transition, that it's a nice tapered out transition, which is why I do the light pin pressure on this side and fill in more than I need to, is to make sure I can feather this in. Probably a little bit of highlight here against this eye, because they have that kind of bulge there, and then another bit of one here. There might not be because their heads turn so much, but visually that can help us if we, you know, fudge it just a little bit in places. Just like underneath the eye, likely wouldn't actually be highlight, but again, it can help give it a little bit of a burst. On a lot of animals, there would be highlight if they were facing forward, if their eyes weren't on the side. The squirrel's eyes are on the side of his head, so there probably wouldn't be, but it can still, again, it can still help. So I often add it. Visually, it helps us sort of sort it out, make it seem right, even though it's not necessarily. Likewise, we're going to pull kind of that highlight of the forehead all the way down to the eye here, and then feather it back from there. Now the cheek on this side, even though it's the side away from the light source, right, the nose doesn't do enough to block it, so there would be a bit of highlight kicking in over here as well, but not against the back side of it. This would still be in shadow, just kind of in the middle where his cheek is pushed forward. And then the individual toes are going to be in highlight. Bearing in mind with the light source coming over here, probably some of the leg, because it's not really tucked under him. So you probably have a strip coming down here that's in highlight. But this is turning kind of down, so this edge is less likely to be in highlight. Not only that, no edges, you know, you don't really have an edge that is in highlight, but the additional problem of it actually turning down so that it's almost away from it. Now they have claws. That's why I'm leaving a gap there. His claws would be coming down. They're not big, but all squirrels have them. A little bit of a dip in the highlights as the toes kind of turned away, so the toes right at the top where the toes are meeting into the hand, or the fingers are meeting into the hand, would be turned away from the light source and therefore in shadow. Some overlapping of fur can be really good to help make it seem like it's more natural. This is such an extreme bit of color. It may not work as nicely as they usually do, but I probably am gonna push the purple a bit to make it look like it blends better into the orange, and I'm probably gonna take some of the orange and do the same into the purple. Doing this edge in shadow because so we have, the purple marks the edge of the arm, and then you have the body, which is red, and so this would be in shadow as it rounds away from the light source. Basically a gap between the purple and the red here. The hair on their ears gets pretty long and kind of flappy, so these would be nice long strokes. Boy, this guy is so colorful. All right. Now we have that kind of off-white color for his chin, chest, and legs. And then it's just the nose, mouth, and the eyes. I might have to tone down the red and the purple. They seem like they have a lot, but it's almost blindingly, like I need to desaturate it a little bit. And this isn't white, as you can see, right? Like, it's significantly off-white. It's even more off-white than my standard white color. Now, as it comes under the head, it will go into shadow, but not at first, because you have that angle coming in, and it's at an angle, so, the head would be casting, if the light source is coming from over here, the shadow the head would be casting is here. Right? Like this would be in shadow, and this is still in highlight. So whenever you're thinking about light source, a shadow is going to mimic where the object is, sort of sitting in relation to the light source. So therefore, he's going to have shadow or highlight here still, and then it's going to go into sort of a slow shadow as it kind of comes down. When I do the pink, probably going to readjust that pink layer to be under this layer, because this hair is coming up over his lip here just a little bit. So I'm going to want that to be under. In fact, I may put it under everything because the hair here is also going to be over his nose. Just a little bit of highlight coming through here on his bottom lip before going into shadow. And then I'm just mixing it. You can see that sort of blends nicely. These two colors, this light or this whitish color and the orange, there's no conflict there. And I'm adding highlight to this arm, right? I need to make sure I match this little highlight I've already done. So once I get to here, start feathering it out. have such beefy arms. They, I feel like they could take me on, arm wrestle me. When they're almost comically big, like they look out of proportion, but man. Give his lip a little bit of highlight, but for the most part we don't want that to be too prominent. And we're going to be adding in a little tooth in his mouth. Right now he just kind of looks shocked. We also still have to add his claws. So let's get his claws in. Once we add the claws, I'll also be bringing in the fur around it to help sort of clean up these lines. Give them each just a little bit of highlight, just making sure they make sense as well. I'm going to come in and fix the hair around their claws. Now we're going to give him a little tooth. I don't know if I need it, but it's going to be in his mouth, so it's going to be pretty dark. Just want it identifiable as a tooth. Just a tiny bit of highlight to distinguish it, but otherwise not much. Alright. Now their eyes are brown and noticeable. Some squirrels, it's hard to see their eyes, but with these guys it looked like it was relatively easy. Like always, I'm going to use the select tool to help clean these edges up on the eye. And then it inevitably creates a few gaps, so coming back in here and cleaning up those gaps. And I'll start filling it in. Like always, on the side opposite the light source, I'm going to put that burst of light on the pupil. And then we'll fill in on the side of the light source that highlight. That'll fade to shadow as it comes to the edge, but be on highlight all the way under the pupil, connecting into that burst of light. And then fading out once we reach the edge, just making sure that that burst against the pupil here has a sort of feathers out into the shadow. And then the light flare, starting with the eye that's in the most shadow here. What we're going to do on this side is something I like to do, where you take the fur, right? So I'm just going to try and mimic fur with my select tool and kind of draw that in place to erase out, as if that's casting a shadow. I'm going to try that again. Not that it was bad, but yeah, I think that works. And then the final thing to do is to add the whiskers. They have a lot of different whiskers. Some are black, some are white. We're just going to do it in white, since the black might not show up as nicely. So when you're drawing whiskers, you draw from the shoulder, right? You just make these quick swipes. Don't put a lot of pin pressure. And you bunch them together. So if you have a bunch going one way, make sure you have if you have one going one way, make sure there's several going that way. Otherwise it starts to look a little off. theirs go all the way up, so we're going to have some coming up too. Again, trying to bunch them. Look more natural that way. And then whatever you do on one side, you need to do on the other. So if you have a bunch coming down, etc. Yeah. Alright, so that is how you draw an Indian giant squirrel. I hope that was helpful. In the floating nether next to me I have other videos of art tutorials I have done, and I will see you all soon. Thank you so much. Take care.